Okay, today we pick up with the reformers of the Roman Empire. Our first reformer is Tiberius Gracchus, and Tiberius Gracchus bypassed the Senate to belong to the Council of Plebes. Remember, the Council of Plebes was created to give the poor people a voice in government and to help them out. And so he could have been a senator, but he decides instead to become a member of the council. And what he's going to focus on is land reform. And he wants to take land from the rich and give it to the poor. And this is going to make the senators pretty hostile because the senators were all the rich people and they didn't like this idea. And so they are going to arrange for his assassination to get rid of him so that he doesn't cause any more problems. Well, his son, Gaius Gracchus, is going to continue his reforms, and he also gets assassinated because he's trying to make changes like this. Well, eventually, the Roman military is going to have a series of defeats. Remember that because of the creation of the latifundia, with the lack of people owning land, there's going to be a decline in the military. Well, when the military starts declining, there's going to be less success for them. And so this is going to signal a need for change for the Romans, especially the senators, that something is going to have to change. And the man who's going to make this big change first is going to be Consul Marius. Now, as consul, he was in charge of protecting Rome. And so he's going to go on this win the war campaign. And so he is going to attack in Africa, and he has victory in Africa. He's going to defeat the Celts, which are in northern Europe. And this gives him great personal power because here's a guy who is going out with a smaller military but managing to make a great impact. So he begins the creation of this new professional army. That this new army is going to swear loyalty oaths not to the Senate but to himself, to General Marius instead. And so that's going to be a huge deal because that makes the Senate a little uneasy about what he's going to do. He also will recruit volunteers, basically saying that once you get out of the military, when you retire, you're going to get land. And for a lot of people, that was a huge incentive because very seldom do you get just free land. You know, you have to pay large amounts of money. And so Marius is very, very popular because of this. The Council of Plebes is actually going to vote to give him more power than just the consul. And so they are going to give him Sulla's position. Now, Sulla was the other consul, and he's the one who's in charge of all of Rome. Marius was in charge of just Rome, the city. Sulla's in charge of all of Rome. And so he's kind of got an upper hand. So they're going to go, the Council of Plebes are going to vote to give Marius Sulla's position. Sulla is very unhappy about this. And so he is going to wage a civil war against Marius. And he actually ends up winning. And he declares himself dictator in order to bring about the republic, the old republic, where there was more power for the upper class and more power for himself in particular. And so he goes on this reign of terror. He's going to revise the Constitution. He gives all of the power to the Senate and takes away power from the Council of Plebes, you know, as part of a revenge because they're the ones that gave Marius his job. Eventually, he retires, which, you know, as a dictator, I don't know that you're able to retire, but he does. And he retires, and so did he really achieve his goal of bringing about the traditional republic? Kind of, but what he really served as was an example of if you want power, you need to use the army to seize it. And that's going to be something that comes about a lot in Roman history. So after he retires, he dies shortly after that, and a bunch of civil wars are going to break out because everybody's trying to scramble for power and see who's going to be the next in charge. And so there's this civil war for about 10 years, and then we finally get people that are going to be stepping up. And this group of people are called the First Triumvirate. First, because there's going to be a second, and triumvirate because there's three of them. So you have Crassus, who is the richest man in Rome, and he had gotten a lot of publicity because he crushed a slave rebellion. You get Pompey, who's a military hero and had done very well in the military. And then you have Julius Caesar, who's sort of the spokesman for the populares, the common man, and he's also a military hero himself. Well, all of these guys, once they gain power, are going to get new, very nice military commands. Crassus is going to be in charge of Syria, Pompey is in charge of Spain, and Caesar is going to be up fighting in Gaul or in France. Unfortunately, about 5 years into them getting power, Crassus is going to be killed in battle. And so it becomes a competition between Pompey and Caesar as to who's going to take over his territory of Syria. And the senators are going to vote for Caesar to give up his military command. They don't want him. They want Pompey because they feel Pompey is easier to control. Julius Caesar, on the other hand, is going to refuse. And so he is going to march on Rome and cause a civil war to break out. And he wins because he's got the people behind him. And Caesar becomes dictator. And then 3 years after becoming dictator, he declares himself dictator for life. So that means he's not going to retire like Sulla retired. So he is going to pass a series of reforms to prevent problems. He's going to increase the Senate to 900, from 500 to 900. He's going to give citizenship to his supporters in the provinces, so people that weren't technically Roman. He's still going to give them Roman citizenship as a reward for supporting him. He also planned several building projects, bridges and dams and irrigation systems, all kinds of stuff that were going to be paid for by the state. But there was a lot of fear that he had too much control, that he wasn't maybe making the best decisions for all of Rome, just for those that would make him popular. And so there's this conspiracy that's going to rise up against him, that we need to get him out of power now before he starts doing too much. And so this conspiracy is going to be created by Marcus Brutus and Gaius Cassius. And they both, Marcus Brutus was Julius Caesar's best friend, and Gaius Cassius is one of his top advisors. And they both plotted against Caesar, basically saying, we got to get rid of this guy. And so they decided that on March 15th, which is the Ides of March, that they are going to assassinate him in full view of the Senate and get all the Senate's approved. Multiple senators are going to be partaking in this assassination. Well, Caesar is actually warned by a prophecy to beware the Ides of March, and his wife has a dream that he's going to be killed, but he just basically says, no, nothing can hurt me. I'm going to be fine. And so he goes to give his speech to the Senate, and when he enters the Senate, he is assassinated. And there will be a civil war that breaks out as a result for a very short time. But then it brings about the second triumvirate. Second because it's the second one, and triumvirate because there's three. And you have three people again, and these three are fighting this civil war against Caesar's killers. So to see who's going to take over after Caesar. So the second triumvirate includes Octavian, who was Caesar's nephew. He was also seen as Caesar's heir, that he would be the next one to take over after Caesar. You also had Mark Antony, who was Caesar's assistant, and he is going to ally himself with the Egyptian queen, Cleopatra, and that's how he's going to gain some military power and some money in order to wage this war against Caesar's killers. And then you have Lepidus, and Lepidus was in charge of Africa, and so he's also bringing in a lot of military prowess. And eventually, these three of the second triumvirate are going to take on Caesar's killers, and we get the Battle of Actium. And this quarrel is going to lead to this battle, and the second triumvirate wins. And eventually, the three of the second triumvirate fight amongst themselves, and they can't decide who's going to be in charge, and that leads to another civil war. And eventually Octavian is going to be the one who wins. Caesar's heir is going to be the one who wins, and that will lead us into the Roman Empire.